And good evening, everybody. I'm Rup Raj. You're watching The Pulse here on Fox 2, coming to you from the road in Lansing, Michigan, as we talk about all things people, power, and politics. We are taking the show on the road here in Lansing. We've done this in Washington, D.C. We did this from the Detroit Auto Show, and we're doing it here in Lansing for very good reason. There are some big ideas on the road from Detroit to Lansing as I was driving here today. The thought about how we're going to fix the damn roads. The Republicans say they have an answer. It'll cost $3.1 billion. They say they have the cash to do it. We have two lawmakers with very different ideas about why that idea can work and why others say it's a dead end. We'll take a close look at that coming up in a few minutes here. And she's considered a rising star in the Democratic Party. Will she actually run for Senate when Gary Peters vacates his seat? We're talking to Senator Mallory McMurrow and also Senator Jim Runstead, a Trump loyalist and someone who really is a conservative, has some big ideas about why he thinks it's a good idea for Governor Whitmer to continue to warm up to President Trump at the White House. And speaking of the White House, so much news coming out of D.C. at this hour. Even at this hour, we're going to take a look right now at some of the big headlines happening from D.C. to the D, starting with this.
My administration will take all lawful steps to shut down the department. We're going to shut it down and shut it down as quickly as possible. It's doing us no good.
President Trump making good on his campaign promise to target the Department of Education. Today, he signed an executive order to begin the dismantling of the agency, giving authority over to the states. It's something he's planned to do even as he nominated Linda McMahon as Education Secretary, saying he wanted her to put herself out of a job. While actually shutting down the department would require an act of Congress, the administration has already been busy gutting the agency by slashing its workforce in half. There have also been deep cuts to the Office for Civil Rights and the Institute of Education Sciences, which gathers data on the nation's academic progress. Tonight, Democrats and teacher unions are pushing back, saying the most vulnerable students will be hurt the most.
So a kid who has disabilities, a kid who is poor, a kid who's going to Head Start, a kid who's in a rural area, kid who is in a career tech ed program, a kid who gets a Pell Grant, a kid who's limited English proficient. Every single one of those kids, which are essentially most of our kids in public schools.
Now, the president will have to maintain some core functions even as he tries to return more school controls to the states. We'll be hearing from some state lawmakers here in Michigan about the president's executive order right here from Lansing in just a few minutes. By the way, if you have federal student loans, yep, you'll still have to pay them back. A federal judge has temporarily blocked Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, from Social Security Administration systems that hold personal data on millions of Americans. The team has also been ordered to delete any personally identifiable data that they may have. It comes after labor unions and retirees asked for an emergency order limiting DOGE access to the agency and its vast collections of personal data, saying it violates privacy laws and presents security risks. The Trump administration says DOGE has a 10-person team of federal employees at the Social Security Administration.
We just want everybody to know, don't let the government just take your post office away from you.
Members of the Postal Workers Union and some of its allies demonstrating in Detroit today. They're angry about a possible plan by the Trump administration to transfer the U.S. Postal Service to the Department of Commerce, which would strip it of its independence. Detroit is just one of 150 cities where this day of action was held.
Whose post office? The people's post office.
You know, they're joined by other cities like New York, Dallas, L.A., and Cincinnati. Today's demonstrations come about a week after the Postmaster General agreed to work with DOGE on fixing the Postal Service's budget and look for more ways to run efficiently.
It's despicable, the violence that has taken place against Tesla, the company, its employees, and also just Americans who have chosen to drive an electric vehicle.
We have charged multiple people. Get ready, more coming.
The Trump administration denouncing the damage being carried out against Tesla dealerships around the country. Incidents have been reported in Oregon, Massachusetts, and just this week, Molotov cocktails were thrown at vehicles at a dealership in Las Vegas with the word "resist" spray painted on a building. There was even a website sharing the personal information of Tesla owners to pressure them to sell their cars. That's been taken down. Now, here in Metro Detroit, there are actually some Teslas on display at various locations, including the Somerset Collection Mall in Troy. Police there telling Fox 2 they're keeping an eye on things. The damage to Teslas have been in response by job cuts and other reductions by DOGE, which of course is co-funded by Elon Musk. To date, DOGE says it's saved Americans $115 billion in taxpayer money. And finally, after 2.5 years in captivity, an American detained by the Taliban in Afghanistan has been freed. Delta Airlines mechanic George Glesman was released today in a deal made by American and Qatari mediators. He was detained by the Taliban in 2022 without charges after traveling to Afghanistan for a vacation. In a statement, Secretary of State Marco Rubio praised Qatar for their commitment and diplomatic efforts, calling them instrumental in securing Glesman's release. Glesman is the third American detainee to be released by the Taliban since January. As we say, this show is all about you as we focus on all things people, power, and politics. Let's talk about the people for a moment. You often hear from adults on this show about their thoughts on what's happening in D.C. and Detroit and this Lansing as well. But what about the younger people, the next generation? And what about the next generation of broadcasters? Fox 2 honored to be a part of the Michigan Association of Broadcasters panel today. Producer of The Pulse, Aaron Jordan, director Adam Payne, and myself had the chance to sit in on this panel and answer questions to the next generation of our broadcasters. And I also wanted to tap into what they think about the state of politics in D.C. and here in Michigan. Behind the scenes, backstage, one of our young broadcasters, what's your name?
Jarif Rashid.
Jarif, what do you think about the state of politics right now in Washington?
In Washington, I think the state of politics overall is focused a lot more on attacking the individual as opposed to actually focusing on the broadcast, like the major issues that we as young people are dealing with.
Politicians in general, I feel like, are not very active in, satisfying the interests of their constituents. I feel like a lot of political interests are more corporate than individual focus.
Both sides really aren't being taken serious, and especially right now with Trump being in office, there's a lot of fear-mongering happening right now currently, and a lot of political issues, especially with individualism and corporations, are not being taken seriously. So I'm not really pleased right now with our overall government.
You're on The Pulse. Your thoughts on politicians, Democrats and Republicans?
Politicians. So I think it's a very polarizing subject. There's like a lot of differences between them. Like look at more like the Republican side, like Trump. He's very different than like Biden, who's like very old and like he can barely talk now. With Trump, he can barely talk like sense, common sense. So like both of them are kind of bad. I don't really like the politicians very much. I think we should be controlled by ourselves.
I think in DC especially, it's kind of chaotic right now. It's hard to be a student in this environment and know what's going on. In Michigan, I think, again, chaotic, but I don't think people really know as much what's going on in Michigan. I don't think it's covered as much.
People should care.
Oh, yeah, people should care. I think state government is a lot more important than national government because it affects you sooner and on a more personal level.
All right, a lot going on. Governor Gretchen Whitmer, by the way, has spent not one, but 2 separate days in Washington, in D.C., talking to President Donald Trump. She's no longer that woman from Michigan. When we come back on The Pulse, how good of an idea is it for Governor Whitmer, for her own political career and for the state of Michigan, to get closer to President Trump? We're talking to Senator Mallory McMurrow about that when we come back, as we take The Pulse on the road here in Lansing. And welcome back to The Pulse, where we talk all things people, power, and politics. Here coming from you inside the Crown Plaza Hotel in Lansing, Michigan, the state capital, as we take the show on the road. So much going on this snowy, but believe it or not, here in Lansing, and rainy day in Metro Detroit. A flurry of news, of course, always happening here in the capital. I guess you could call it a blizzard in some ways, because there is so much news coming out of Lansing right now. Joining us now, Representative Noah Arbit and also Representative Jamie Thompson. Good to see you both. Thanks for joining us. You're appropriately wearing your party colors. Red, of course, Jamie, as a Republican, a little bit of blue as a Democrat, perhaps not on purpose, but there is a line in the sand when it comes to this road funding bill. Let's talk about that for a moment. We'll begin with you, Representative Thompson. $3.1 million. This road bill, you say, will help fix the damn roads for good. Why do you think this is a good way to fund this bill and to work forward with this?
Thank you. I think this is the #1 issue affecting voters in the state of Michigan. I heard a lot about it on the campaign trail, and I think that we had to think outside of the box. I think we did a great job of doing that. We looked at how much money we have coming into the state. We have the money to do this. We do, however, have to cut a few things. We have to cut the corporate welfare that has been given to just certain organizations and corporations. We have to make sure that we're not raising taxes, and then we have to stop the politician pet projects. If we're able to do that, we have the money to do this, and we actually have had the money for several years.
Well, I know that there's a debunked program that some of those credits you're talking about for businesses, they're owed that money, and a lot lot of those businesses are saying, hey, wait a minute here. That was money that belongs to us. Representative Arbit, is that a concern for Democrats right now?
Well, I definitely think it's a concern. I'm honestly disappointed because I agree with Representative Thompson because I think road funding is definitely an issue that the people of Michigan care about. It goes to the heart of our economic vitality here in the state of Michigan. Republicans and Democrats agree on that point. Where I think where we depart is the fact that we actually don't have the money, the revenue right now to fund the roads to the degree that they need to be every year, unless you're cutting, massive amounts from health care and education, right? And the problem is that the Republican plan that was put forward is a start, but unfortunately there isn't a good guarantee as to where those other programs won't be cut. The $3.1 billion, you only get $1 billion from cutting the corporate incentives as well as cutting the politician earmarks, right? And so once you get rid of that, that's only $1 billion. The other $2 billion, where's that coming from? And there's no answers from the Republican side as to where that's coming from. And it should really be negotiated as part of the whole budget.
But one of the things that Republicans have argued is that as $3.1 billion, by the way, as you say, the roads, so you cut a little bit from the education, but then you fund it with the general surplus and the surpluses that we've had over the last few years. Is that not good enough?
But then, so you backfill the education, but all the other things that we fund through the general fund is being cut. And those are things that matter to Michiganders. That includes local governments. That includes things like services for people, health care, our Medicaid. Right now, when we are enduring cuts from the federal level, the Republicans in Michigan here are saying that we're going to cut at the state level, and I don't think that that's a good value add for the people of Michigan. We need to be clear about where we are funding, where we are not funding, and if we need to look at new revenue, and I don't think the Republican plan really does that.
Representative Thompson, there is a concern about new revenue coming in. We can kind of divvy this up any which way we want and try to dip into the general fund, but you need money for other projects. What do you tell people who are concerned about those being cut?
Well, I think that we have had that revenue come into the state of Michigan. At one point in 2023, we had a $9 billion surplus that was not earmarked for the roads or put towards the roads, and that really would have been beneficial. That went to a lot of pet projects. I think that we have the opportunity to keep all of the health care and all of the funding for the schools and the special programs. I'm in a district in Wayne County that means a lot to me, and I have no intention on cutting any of that. But I have to ask, what would the other plan be? We don't want to raise taxes. The Michiganders have made that very clear. Their incomes are really tight right now. Inflation is still high. So what would be the plan if we weren't cutting taxes?
Well, I guess I would just say, to the Republicans, they're backing a president who is implementing bankrupting tariffs on the people of Michigan, whose only those tariffs are all they're doing is increasing the cost of goods, groceries, cars, and gas, and really that's putting the squeeze on people. But if we're talking about needing new revenue, right, what they're doing is squeezing Michiganders even further.
I find it interesting, Representative Thompson, that at a time that the election was happening, Republicans were very vocal about inflation and about the state of the economy and about the rising cost of things. But now we're hearing so many of those same Republicans say, hey, we've had recessions before. We've had issues before with the economy, and we shouldn't be as concerned. Do you follow that theory?
I'm not concerned. I think that Donald Trump ran on policies that work, and I think that the American people, including the state of Michigan, voted for those policies. I don't agree that tariffs are going to destroy America. I think that it is a bargaining chip, and I think that it's working because you see those countries back down when he stands up. And I think that the policies that were running in Michigan didn't work, and people wanted something different. I 100% trust that we're going to get back on track. I know it's scary. I know that it's thinking differently than we have, and there may be some adjustment. But for example, we promised that we would lower taxes. We put forward a bill to lower the income tax, and I actually don't know why you voted no on lowering the income tax.
Because I'm not interested in being an economic vandal and engaging in economic vandalism to the state of Michigan and cutting programs willy-nilly without a plan for how we're going to deliver services, the safety services for the people of Michigan.
You think cutting income taxes will hurt Michigan and other programs?
Well, we won't be able to fund the things that we do here in the state of Michigan. We know that our institutions are broken. We know that government needs to deliver better. We know that the taxpayers need a better deal in terms of the efficiency of the programs that their taxpayer dollars are funding. But cutting those programs and leaving people high and dry without any certainty that they're going to get those services from their local governments or from their state is bad economic policy. It's bad for the people of Michigan.
What's good, according to the UAW head, Sean Fain, was these tariffs. Sean Fain, of course, supported Joe Biden during the election, ardent Democrat. Democrat, labor, and he came out and said, hey, Trump finally got it right. Why do you disagree with that, with the tariffs?
Well, I think that we see from history that protectionism, the idea that you can support policies that are going to, these tariffs, right, that are going to increase the cost of goods, groceries, cars, and gas, really, and protect American industry. It doesn't work. All it does is increase goods and putting up trade barriers. It's not good. And the thing is, I'm a free trader. I believe in comparative advantage. Sure. I believe in capitalism, and those used to be conservative principles. I don't know why there isn't a single House Republican who is willing to stand up to Trump's ruinous tariffs.
There's a lot of competing thoughts and things that you wouldn't have 10 years ago written in a book about what Republicans believe, what Democrats believe now. It seems like hats have switched in many ways with policy, but it's one that we continue to do on this show to talk about, and that's why we thank Representative Noah Arbit and Representative Thompson for joining us. First time on the Pulse, Representative Thompson. Come back again. Noah, always good to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us here.
Thank you very much.
When we come back on the Pulse, as we take the Pulse on the road here from Lansing, we're talking to Senator Mallory McMurrow and Senator Jim Runstead. Their thoughts on how Governor Whitmer is warming up to President Trump, making 2 trips in a month to the White House. That's when we come back here on the Pulse. And welcome back to the Pulse as we talk all things people, power, and politics. This on the road in Lansing. We thank our friends at the Crown Plaza Hotel here in Lansing for letting us do the show inside as it is snowing and raining outside on this very, very big news night. We thank you for joining us here on the Pulse. And we're also grateful to be joined by Senator Mallory McMurrow. Many people have said you're a rising star in the party. We're here to talk about that. We're also here to talk about some really big issues, and we thank you for joining us here.
Thanks for having me. Welcome to Lansing on a beautiful snowy spring day.
It is what it is. You're in Michigan. Mother Nature's calling the shots here, but right now it looks like the White House is calling the shots when it comes to the Department of Education. I want to ask you your concerns when you hear about President Trump and DOJ wanting to cut the Department of Education. Big news tonight.
So listen, we had an appropriations hearing yesterday, and what I think a lot of people don't realize is the federal Department of Education has nothing to do with curriculum. It has a lot to do with funding. So if the federal DOE goes away, Michigan stands to lose over $2 billion in education funding, and that would just about wipe out our state rainy day fund, which is at the highest it's ever been at $2.7 billion in one fell swoop.
What about the fact that before 1980, the Department of Education did not exist, and Detroit schools at that point were doing better than they are now? When people put those anecdotal, facts to you, what do you say back to that?
I think there are valid concerns, but you don't dismantle something in one fell swoop. President Clinton did this. He did a really thoughtful, thorough process of getting to government efficiency with a transparent process, going through commissions, bringing together a whole bunch of different stakeholders, not slashing a department in half and just seeing what's going to happen.
What about tariffs? How concerned are you that these tariffs go into effect and it hurts our autos or hurts our workers?
I'm very concerned. When you think about the auto industry in particular, we can see a car travel across the border between Michigan and Canada 7 or 8 times before it's finally assembled. So we've seen estimates that show that the price of a new car could increase anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 at a moment when people are already feeling squeezed. Now, we do need to be thoughtful about tariffs that help our local Michigan manufacturers succeed on countries like China, who are becoming competitors.
Sean Fain with the UAW seems like he's in big support of the president's plans to put these tariffs down.
I think that we have to get to a place where, again, it's not just about throwing anything against the wall and seeing what sticks. We know that NAFTA was devastating for our auto industry, for the UAW. So I hope that the president takes Sean's words to heart, is really targeted about tariffs in a way that benefits Michiganders and doesn't hurt them. One last question.
You were considered a rising star on this party. Are you going to run for Gary Peters' Senate seat?
I haven't made any announcements yet.
Why not just make it now, right? You got a whole audience waiting for you. But the future of this party really is dependent on younger leaders and people like Alyssa Slotkin, yourself, across the board. This party has learned a lot from this last election, hasn't it?
I think it has, and I think that what we're seeing is an entire generation and multiple generations now, not only of just Democrats, but of people who no longer believe that the system works in the way that they wanted it to, and that's going to require a new generation of leaders. This is a big decision to make. It's one that I don't make lightly. I have a 4-year-old daughter. I want to make sure that any decision I make is in the best interest of Michiganders, so more soon.
Well, more soon, but it's not uncommon for someone who's running for office to write a book. We know that you just are writing a book. You just came up with a book with a lot of ideas that people would be very interested in on both sides of the political political aisle. But Senator McMurrow, we're out of time, but I thank you for joining us here today.
Thanks, Rube.
Good to see you here.
You too.
You know, we had the chance to catch up with Senator Jim Runstead, a Republican on the other end of the spectrum, who would tell you that Ronald Reagan proposed shutting down the Department of Education, and for reasons that were good. Senator Runstead with more on that right now.
The Secretary of the Department of Education said that if this does in fact happen, that they're going to be deliberative to make sure critical programs are not impacted. So the first thing that Democrats are going to point to is special education and things like that. They're going to be very deliberative, but what they're going to get rid of is this massive, gargantuan, bloated bureaucracy that has poured $3 trillion down a rat hole since 1979. Before that, we didn't have this Department of Education. Education was much better. We have not improved the test scores at all with the $3 trillion poured down a rat hole. What has to happen is this money has to be delivered back to the states, the incubators of success. That's where we can really have the rubber meet the road, where the parents and the kids can interact with their local teachers, their local officials, and craft the education that they need, not some licensed, insulated, woke bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. So, no, this is going to be great for education.
Interesting thoughts on education. What about Governor Gretchen Whitmer? She has been to the White House twice in the last month, talking to President Donald Trump. Senator Jim Runstead with more on why he thinks that's good for her and good for the state.
Well, I think she's realized that there's a change in the sheriff in town, and so she's going to meet with the new sheriff and see what she can cut in terms of a deal. And there's a lot of things that Michigan can certainly use if she can establish a relationship with the president. She's been slinging mud at him for years and years. Hopefully for the state of Michigan, that's going to end, and that she can work cooperatively with his administration for the benefit of the state of Michigan.
And finally, this road funding bill that Republicans are touting as we began the show talking about a $3.1 billion effort to fix the damn roads. Republicans say it's a good deal. Senator Runstead with why he thinks this should be an easy road to passing.
Well, I saw them blow through a $9 billion one-time surplus. $9 billion. Not going to happen again. You know how much went into the roads? $200 million out of $9 billion. That's what the Democrats do. Blow the money, just splash money and waste money. No, what we need to do is put money to the roads. Our roads are crumbling. They're a mess. If you go to the border of Ohio or Canada and you look at the difference, our roads are a catastrophe. And what they're trying to do is, without increasing taxes, direct another almost $700 million annually to the roads. It's a great idea. No tax increase, reallocating the money and cutting some of the waste and garbage out of the budget. I tell you, I've seen so much waste. The budget has, since I got elected to the Senate in 2018, has increased 40%, $30 billion. Just waste. The average person's budget didn't increase like that, but the bloated government just keeps growing and growing, and the Democrats are spending and spending. We need to redirect that money in a very critical way to the roads, and this package will do that.
Senator Runstead, it's always good to talk to you under any circumstance. Thanks for taking the call. As we like to do on this show, we take the show on the road here today in Lansing. We thank our friends at the Crown Plaza Hotel on this wet day outside for bringing the Pulse inside, but outside of Studio C here at the state capitol. If you have anything that you'd like to offer to the Pulse in terms of a comment, or maybe it's a question, hit us up anytime. I'm Ruth Raj. As usual, we'll see you tomorrow night. Good night, everybody.